Hello and welcome to today's episode of the Be Free podcast. So today we are looking at, I had done a little Instagram story, just checking in with what you guys felt that you needed right now, any areas that you were struggling with, what you would like a podcast on. And I had numerous feedback about fatigue, burnout, just feeling really overwhelmed right now. There was a couple of other things that came up I'm actually going to do in separate podcasts because I feel that like this theme is quite like a big one to tackle. Some of the other things that we are going to cover in podcasts to come are how to get out of a funk. I feel like I need a whole podcast just on that to support you. And another one somebody had asked about what is shamanic medicine. So I might get a guest on for that one, or I might share a bit on that myself. I'll see kind of where we go with that. But right now, let's really have a look at overwhelm, burnout, fatigue. Now, I feel like almost this should be like my specialist subject, right? Because this is a pattern that has shown up for me in my life over and over and over and over again. So it is something that I can 100% relate to, especially in the past 2 years. I have experienced this burnout again myself, the fatigue, and just kind of, general dissatisfaction with life and just feeling really overwhelmed by life. And as I navigate perimenopause as well, it really has come to highlight this area. Now, what I would say is when we feel this way, the last thing we want to do is take action, right? Generally, we want to numb out because we're overwhelmed, right? So we're overwhelmed in various areas of our life, and I'm going to go through these with you. But we tend to we can't be bothered cooking, we'll numb out through social media or television. We'll tend to procrastinate because we just feel like we can't get started. We'll maybe say no to social things that we might ordinarily have said yes. We'll tend to feel guilt, shame, upset, annoyance, frustration, all these really heavy emotions, which really isn't supporting us and feeling less overwhelmed. As I said, this is a pattern that is something really, really close to my heart, and it's something that I still navigate over and over again. But what I would say is that I now can recognize when these things are appearing. So before I go into kind of why you might be facing overwhelm, burnout, I do want to reiterate that this isn't a medical podcast. If you feel that this may be due to a medical reason, 100% go speak to your doctor, have a chat with your healthcare professional or whoever it is that supports you with your health. If you are struggling with energy management and what I mentioned doesn't resonate, or you're like, oh my gosh, I'm doing all these things and I still feel this way, then absolutely please do go get checked out. What I would say is the 10 things, there's actually 11. I started with 10 and then I had to add the final one, which is like a real key one for me. There's 10 things that I'm going to go through. And these are things that I see in my clients and I see in my own life when I experience burnout and fatigue. And these will support you regardless of whether you have a medical condition or whether it's lifestyle and other things that are going on. So I'm going to go through these 10 things, and then I'll go into a little bit more detail in each one just to help you really truly understand what each of them mean and how you can begin to make changes to support yourself. Because the thing is with overcoming burnout, it does require action, and a lot of that can be based around our lifestyle and the decisions that we're making. But without sounding too heavy on it, it is an incredible opportunity, right? I actually, it is an opportunity to truly align your life, to really check in, to really create a life and lifestyle that feels great for you, that feels nourishing, that fills you with vitality and love and energy, and spaciousness. So although you may be feeling stuck in this rut right now, there are lessons to be had here. There is action you can take. And I 100%, there are things that you can do that will make you feel better. So the 10 or 11 key areas are lack of, and I've put lack of, okay? So in most of these, lack of boundaries, lack of fun, lack of self-love and self-care, lack of support, lack of rest, lack of nutrition, lack of connection, lack of alone time, lack of free time and spaciousness, lack of nervous system regulation. And the 11th one that I had to add, because this has been the game changer for me, and you'll notice a lot of my content is kind of targeted around this now, is really listening to the cycles and cycle of life that you're in, okay? We cannot expect to feel the same all the time. We cannot expect to be go, 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 go all the time. That is a recipe for burnout, okay? And even mentally, sometimes we might be thinking, yeah, right? But physically, on a physical level, our body might be going, oh my gosh, no. Or spiritually, might be like, oh my gosh, this just doesn't feel aligned. It doesn't feel right for me. I feel uncomfortable. So before I dive into each of these key areas, and you can begin to understand a bit more about what I mean by each one and whether you're kind of leaking energy in this areas or lacking energy in these areas, I want you to begin to check in with yourself, and you can maybe grab a journal or make a mental note just now, but thinking about, do you have symptoms of burnout? Like, what begins to show up for you that you recognize, oh, okay, I'm actually burnt out? Is it you struggle with insomnia? Is it that you get IBS? Do you begin to get eczema or psoriasis? Does anxiety or depression begin to show up? Migraines, for example. I have a lot of clients over the years who have struggled with migraines. And once they begin to align their life and move out of this state of burnout, that actually those disappear or settle, right? So beginning to tune into the signs of the body, also emotionally, how we're showing up. Are we avoiding phone calls? Are we feeling like really snappy when we wouldn't normally be snappy, or emotional, like it's just going to take one more thing and you're going to burst into tears? How does it begin to show up for you? Because you really don't want to be getting to this point, right? We don't want to be triggering IBS or psoriasis or, screaming at our children or feeling like we can't go to work and crying. Like, we don't want to put ourselves in that position. So this is why when we begin to tackle these areas, we can create a life that feels more enjoyable and more aligned for us. And that is what I am about right now, is really aligning with a life that supports you. Okay, lack of boundaries. And I love this, right? Because this has been such a challenge for me, and something that I'm like really done a lot of work on, because a lot of these things will be patterns, okay? And patterns can be broken, but habitual patterns take time, right? You've maybe been saying, so when it comes to boundaries, yes to things for a very long time. You've maybe been, and I'm thinking about this because the person that posed this question on Instagram has their own business as well. But like, you've maybe been like fitting in clients on your day off, or you've maybe been, like saying, oh yeah, okay, well, I don't normally work till that time of night, but actually, oh, okay, I'll do it just this once or whatever. Is it, friends, asking a lot of you, and you not really feeling in that space yourself, but because it's your friend, you don't want to let them down. So like, yeah, no, it's okay, I'll do it. Or is it your boss asking you to stay late or just do that additional bit of work? I know something I've seen a lot of my clients experience right now is post-COVID, when there was a lot of people made redundant, people lost their jobs, things like that. And then suddenly my clients are taking on additional roles that weren't theirs. So now they're maybe doing the role of like 3 people. You need to speak up. I feel like I've spoken about this in a podcast before. There maybe is a podcast on boundaries, but you do need to speak up in these situations and just say no, right? And if your employer turns around and puts your job at risk, that is not the right employer. Okay. And I know you might be like, oh, well, that's okay for you to say or whatever, right? I need my job. Yeah, but you also need your health. So I know from my experience, because I have just navigated and still navigating nearly 2 years of chronic illness, that your health comes first. And if you do not put these things in place, if you do not stand up, if you do not put the boundaries in place around your time, your health, your emotional health, then you're going to end up ill and burnt out. And that's the last thing I want for anyone. So putting boundaries in place could be boundaries in place with your children, right? Like, no, I said, no, you're not going out tonight. Mom needs this night for herself. Or whatever it is, your partner, the same thing. Like, no, I'm really sorry, I'm not going to be doing that anymore. This role needs to be split between the both of us. So it takes ownership, and it is challenging. And the reason I was kind of laughing when I first said this one and how much work I've done in it, the number of people that say to me, oh, Susie, like, I know you're really busy, like you've got such a busy life, da 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 da. And the thing is, if you were to look at my diary, my life is not busy. I just have really strong boundaries now, and I value healing time for myself, alone time, time in nature, time with my horses, time to get my housework done more now than having a full diary, right? Because that keeps me sane. And I don't have the capacity anymore to do the level of work that I was doing. So yeah, have the boundaries in place. Lack of fun. Okay, so boundaries create opportunities for this to occur. I want you to think about, okay, am I having fun? When was the last time I had fun? When was the last time I laughed? Do I even know like how to have fun? Right? Check in with yourself and see, what does that mean for me? And I'm going to rattle through these a bit more because I try and keep the podcast to a decent level of time frame so that you can enjoy them and they're not like hours long. But yeah, if you wanted to ask me any questions on these, like, please do reach out. But I think that's quite self-explanatory. Check in. When was the last time I had fun, and how can I have more of it? Right? What do I need to do? Like, do I need to arrange to catch up with a friend and have a laugh? Do I need to put my phone on do not disturb and watch episodes of Friends whilst eating ice cream? Like, I don't know, like whatever your fun is, like, let's make it priority. Lack of self-love and self-care. So, when I work with coaching clients, this is why it's like, it really is a holistic view, because the lack of self-love and self-care also comes into the fun, also comes into the boundaries. All these things will weave in to create your beautiful, aligned life. So if you have a lack of boundaries, you've probably got a lack of self-love and self-worth. If you are feeling confident and love yourself fully, you will recognize why it's important to put boundaries in place, why it's important to put all these other things in place. So begin to honor yourself. Like last night, I'd done Wednesday was my day off, but I'd like ridden my horse, I'd been for a walk, I'd been doing some stuff on the computer, and then I was like, oh, I just wanted to kind of numb out. And then I'm like, no, like, what would you do? So I took myself for a lovely bath. I gave myself a nice Ayurvedic massage after my bath, took myself to bed, lay on my Shakti mat, because I know prioritizing and loving myself and giving gratitude to myself, like, oh, you've done a lot today. Like, here, let's like really shower you with love. So how can you implement more self-love for yourself? What does that look like? Lack of support. Now, asking for help is a struggle for so many, and pretty much every single one of my clients like struggles with this initially. Again, coming from lack of self-worth or thinking that we have to have it all done, or it could be control. So if you struggle with anxiety, this can be something that shows up a lot, the difficulty asking for support because you want to control everything, right? I know I had anxiety for like decades. So asking for support, thinking about what area could I get more support? Is it around your house? Is it at work, like I mentioned? Is it support with childcare? Is it, reaching out to a friend for help? Is it getting a therapist? So think about what kind of support do you need? Do you need physical support, mental support, hands-on stuff? Like I've now got a cleaner, and I'm going to do a whole podcast on this actually, manifesting. I'm going to call it negative manifesting, I think, the podcast, but I got a cleaner, I've got food that gets delivered, all of these things, these came into play through burnout, fatigue, and ill health, but ultimately it was what I wanted to manifest, right? I mean, who doesn't want a cleaner and food delivery and support in that way, and support from family and a gardener and like all the things that help. So how can you get that? Lack of rest. So like I mentioned last night, and I will try and remember to hook up, there is a blog post, and I think I did a podcast on it as well, 7 different types of rest, that could be really, really helpful, because rest doesn't have to just be like going to sleep. Rest could be taking a break from screens, taking a break from people. It could be going for a run, if that's like the thing that supports you. Like rest can be active. It doesn't have to be completely like watching TV or whatever, right? Rest is different for everyone. So I will hook up the blog post on that and you can check it out, or the podcast on that. Lack of nutrition. So as I mentioned, at this time, can be a struggle to even want to cook, to think about what to cook. Your brain is fried and you're feeling overwhelmed. And the thought of that and all your body is craving is, just like something probably carby, right? Just to something quick, something easy, something that's probably not particularly nutrient dense. So think about, how can I fuel my body to overcome this fatigue? What can I gift her? What can I gift this vessel, to support her in overcoming fatigue? Like, think about it like you would treat a baby. Like, how would you treat that baby? How would you treat that sacred vessel? What could you do to truly nourish your baby from the inside out? So thinking about, lack of nutrition, making sure that you're hydrated, making sure that you pack yourself full of antioxidants to overcome the stress and overwhelm in your body and reduce the amount of processed stuff if you can. Lack of connection. So some people thrive on connection, some people thrive on alone time. If you are head down, stuck in work, and I've seen myself like this, and then, people are messaging you to go and meet up and you're like, oh my gosh, I don't have time. And actually sometimes what you need is just to go and have that time and remember what life is about, right? Connection, community, friendship, love, relationships. As human beings, we're not designed to do life alone. Right? We're not designed to do life alone. We thrive and survive in community. So having connection, whether that is online, out with your bubble, can be really, really supportive in just helping you move through that space of overwhelm. And then adding on to that, lack of alone time. So if you're like absolutely buzzing, busy schedule, plus you're like busy catching up with lots of people, sometimes we can miss out on that time with ourselves. And this is the time where we can really reset, we can reflect in, we can check in, minus the influence of others. Like, what do we need? Like this morning, I was just sitting on my sofa and I was like, oh gosh, I should really go and get my work done. But I was sitting on the sofa and I just sat there and I was gazing at the autumn leaves and the sun shining through. And I was in such a state of peace and stillness. And I was like, you know what? Sitting in this stillness is such a gift. And I knew that just by sitting there for that moment and appreciating that here I am showing up for you, feeling energized and practicing what I preach, I guess, right? So make sure that you get time by yourself as well, whatever that looks like. Taking yourself to a coffee shop, treating yourself to a nice piece of cake and a cuppa and your book, or, just having time in your bedroom at home. If you have family going about and it's all noisy, you're taking yourself, I used to always, when the kids were younger, lock myself in the bathroom, have a bath. Used to drink back then as well, treat yourself to a glass of fizz, candles. But either way, creating moments for yourself is so important, or getting up earlier so that you have that time for yourself. That can feel really special at this time of year that I'm recording this, just having a candle on and doing that. I'm hoping that you can hear me okay, because I'm not using my mic and it's like so stormy outside and really windy, but normally the computer picks up okay, so fingers crossed. Okay, lack of nervous system regulation. Now, this has been a game changer for me in overcoming fatigue as well. When we are in overwhelm, we tend to move into a space of fight, flight, freeze. So the freeze, that's that procrastination. The fight is obviously that being snappy and all of that. Flight, yeah, avoidance, like, yeah, I just want to run away. Right? So how do we move out of those bodily responses? And that's through nervous system regulation. So that could be through meditation, breath work, yoga, being in nature is a huge one for me. What is going to allow you to drop into that space of calm? Is it mindfully drinking your cup of tea in the morning? Processing your emotions? Is it seeing a therapist? Is it going to a weekly Tai Chi class, Qigong class, or your yoga? Or maybe it's going to the gym as well for you is a great way to regulate your nervous system. So again, all of these are essential. Like these aren't it's not like a pick and mix. Right? All of these are essential to you truly thriving in your life. I will share the blog post that I've written about this as well. I mean, the podcast is a lot more in depth because, I'm just rolling off the top of my head and not writing it down. But there is the blog that I've written about this as well that you can return to. But yeah, nervous system regulation. What can you do to regulate your nervous system? And then finally, cyclical living and really aligning with the season of life that you're in. If you have a fast-paced job, it can't be fast-paced all the time. You need to take time to process, to refine, to check in. So think about the cycles as the seasons. What season are you in? If you are female, think about working with your feminine cycle as well. When you're menstruating, you're going to feel so different from when you're ovulating, right? So check in how you feel at different times throughout the month. Check in where you are in your cycle of life. Is it a busier space of life? Like how you showed up in your 20s will be very different to how you show up in your 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, right? Think about where you are in life, what's important to you, and prioritize that. So this is where the boundaries come in. Prioritize the things that are meaningful for you. They honestly need to come first. And I've learned this over and over and over again. And that's why I'm saying, I really want this for you. So yeah, life is there to thrive, not just to push through until, just till this is past and then things will get better. Just till this is past, things get better. Life can feel challenging, overwhelming, and it's very easy for us to get stuck in patterns that don't support us. Patterns are what the brain thrives on, hence it's very easy for us to drop back into old habits and patterns that don't support us. So just, think about what is preventing you from living this aligned, thriving life based on those 11 things I've mentioned. What can you implement or add in, and what can you take away that's really, really going to support you? Your life is unique. You are unique. Your values and what drives you is unique. So check in where you're at. I really hope that supports you, for the person that requested this episode and for anybody else that's chosen to listen. Thank you so much from my heart and soul. And I will be back soon sharing more. But yeah, with love from me to you. Namaste, my loves.